I want to talk about socialism, which I know we've talked about a lot recently. I want to focus on one thing that's happening in American popular or political culture, and that is the stridency of people who are followers of Bernie Sanders, or more broadly, followers of the democratic socialism, how stridently they now advocate for what they believe to be the only right answer, which is socialism. First, I want to start with a short clip. This is Bernie Sanders, who was being interviewed in September of 2019, and he's talking about the question which got cut off in the beginning was essentially, are you the leader of the socialist revolution? I want you to hear what he had to say, and then this is clip one for the wonderful Derek, who's sitting in for Matt. So this is clip one for Derek, and this is Bernie Sanders in an interview last year.
Well, not only can I lead it, I think I am the person to lead it. I think, first of all, there remain strong differences of opinions among the candidates. And while I'm very proud that we have been able to influence thinking among the American public, such that virtually every one of the policy issues that I talked about 4 years ago, which were seen to be radical and extreme at that time, are now held by a majority of the American people. Now we're continuing to break brand new ground today.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like I'm running on just the ideas that we had 4 years ago.
Sure.
I'm delighted that other people have caught up to me, but we've got to go further. Right now, what our Medicare for All proposal says, for example, is not only will we guarantee health care to all people as a human right, but nobody in America will be spending more than $200 a year on prescription drugs, because we will take on the greed and corruption and price fixing of the pharmaceutical industry.
That was Bernie Sanders, and I want to focus on two things he had to say. One was he was talking about the idea that medical care, health care, is a human right. And so I think this is one aspect of why Bernie Sanders is managing to instill in young people not just a belief in socialism, but a stridency about, I have a right to get what I want. Bernie Sanders told me, I have a right to free health care. And he also said, and I want to really focus on this point too, when we talk about the issues today, he pointed out that when he ran for president in 2016, which now seems so long ago, but when he ran in 2016, he floated ideas, as you just heard him say in that clip. At the time, many people thought they were extreme. He says, and now they're mainstream America. Most people in America agree with them. Well, that is not true. Most Americans do not agree with Bernie Sanders. It still is true that a slight majority of Americans have said they would never vote for a socialist, even though a big chunk of Democrat voters would vote for a socialist. Still, most Americans say they wouldn't. But he's getting at the point that I want us to think about as we continue to focus on the 2020 election cycle. When the left, when a radical leftist like Bernie Sanders plants seeds telling people you have a right to free education, to free health care, to adequate housing, implying the government will provide it for you if you can't provide it for yourself. You have a right to pretty much everything you need that costs money. He ends up instilling in the minds of uninformed young Americans, people not appreciating that nothing actually is free, that if people are told you're going to be getting free things from the government, it really means the government's going to take those things or pay for those things by taking money away from other people. The government has no money. So all Bernie Sanders is really promising his followers is, elect me and I will forcibly confiscate wealth of other Americans, take it from them under threat of imprisonment, which is what happens if you don't pay your taxes, and I'll use that money to give you everything you want for free. This is what Bernie Sanders is promising, and young people have become really smitten with the idea, I have a right to all of this. Two other quick clips. Another clip, this was a story, I didn't see the story when it occurred. It was actually in January, but someone put it up on Twitter in February. This happened. These are Bernie Sanders followers. This is clip two for the wonderful Derek. These are Bernie Sanders followers who are following a woman who happens to be a candidate, she's a candidate named Betsy Dirksen Londrigan, and she's actually a Democrat. But she's running for office, and these Bernie Sanders followers were agitated with her because she would not agree to hold a debate with the socialist candidate. So these people, as you'll see in this clip, They are chanting about her forcing her to have the debate, and they actually surround her and prevent her from leaving her car. Very confrontational, very aggressive. Here they are. This is clip 2 from Derek.
Where does she go? She's going out. Let's go.
Where's Betsy? What do we want? When do we want it? Now! Umbrella. What do we want? When do we want it? Now! What do we want? When do we want it? Now! Block her in, block her in. What do we want? When do we want it? Now! What do we want? When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Get by the window. When do we want it? Now! What do get by her window? When do we want it? Now! What do we want? When do we want it?
I understand there have always been strident activists. There have always been people who think they can be confrontational. But the reason we have Antifa, the reason we have strident Bernie Sanders supporters getting in the face of a woman, these are adult men, and you can see it's nighttime, it's dark, surrounding a woman's car. She's a Democrat, but not good enough for them. They're angry with her, what they're yelling at her, beside they want to force her to agree to a debate with some socialist, is they're yelling, will you agree Medicare for all now? What they mean is free healthcare right now. They feel justified. They feel justified as a matter of political participation to get in this woman's face because she happens to be a Democrat who may not agree with every left-wing idea Bernie Sanders has. Last very, very short clip. We played the longer clip a few weeks ago. But again, Bernie Sanders supporter, a guy who is working on the campaign, what he thinks should happen to people who won't support Bernie Sanders. Here we have clip 3.
So if Trump gets reelected, what?
And cities burn.
What we gotta do?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a lot of time left. We have to save like human civilization. And obviously, Trump don't give two about making sure that the world doesn't.
Guys like that. What are we gonna do with them?
Gulag. Liberals get to fucking wall first.
What are we gonna do with those people that resist the change? Because that's a big deal.
Well, I'll tell you what. In Cuba, what do they do to reactionaries?
They shot him on the beach.
Again, people, this is a Bernie Sanders. It was actually one of his people who had employed by the campaign, working for the campaign, pushing advocacy for Bernie Sanders, and saying basically people who won't agree with Bernie Sanders, he says, well, what did they do to them in Cuba? We shot him on the beach. He's talked about, we played the longer clip a few weeks ago, he talked about sending people who won't agree with the revolution back to concentration camps, back to re-education camps. And I'm telling you, what we need to be talking about in this election cycle is not some abstract comparison like we're in economics class between what is socialism, who owns means of production, what is freedom, what does capitalism mean. We need to recognize that we are looking at a revolutionary mindset that is winning. Bernie Sanders is winning the primaries. He's right now predicted to win all but one of the Super Tuesday primaries. So we may have this conversation. I invite the conversation. I think it's great. Let's have Bernie, the socialist, and America and Trump. That's what I want to see. But I will tell you, it's a very, very serious thing because in the past, for most of our country's history, we could recognize that there were extremists on the Democrat side, there were Marxists, there were leftists, but there was at least to the facade of the public, to the face of the public, a very moderate, we're kind of centrist, moderate people. We're just Democrats. We just like a little higher taxes to help the poor. We just like a little bit more support of unions. But that is not the Democrat Party of today. There is no Democrat Party of today able to say that. And I'll close with this first 5 with this. Nancy Pelosi got cornered and asked, what are you going to do if Bernie Sanders actually wins a nomination? Are you going to stop him? And she said, her quote, I'll be fine if Bernie Sanders wins the nomination. Now, personally, I don't think that's true. I know she's getting a lot of pressure from the big dollar donors on the left saying, You better do something about this, get somebody else in. But for right now, she doesn't even have the backbone, the moral clarity, the political clarity to say to America, the Democrat Party is not socialist, we're not revolutionary, and he can't have our nomination. She does not have the courage to say that. And that, my friends, is today's First Five.